Welcome everyone to the Story Trading Weekly Meetup. We got an action-packed show tonight. We got two presentations, but first, a disclaimer: Story Trading is not an investment advisor. Neither are any of our guest presenters unless stated otherwise. And investing in securities involves significant risk of loss. This presentation is being recorded. It's going to be provided exclusively to our VIP members, usually for a period of up to 7 days, and then we'll post it up on social media. But first, what's in a story trade? Story trading is the practice of understanding market pricing through the lens of what we call the 4 pillars of fundamentals, catalyst, sentiment, and technicals. We do that now in our WhatsApp community and in our Zoom meetings here. And we are actually private beta testing our app right now, which will be the place to discover, collaborate, and validate market moving information through crowdsourced research and social collaboration. So make sure to sign up for a wait list so you can be first to try the app when we're ready to allow others on it. All right, so we got a stock here that Julian brought to our attention on Friday. It's not a VIP pick yet. We're not tracking it. We may start tracking it tomorrow. Julian wanted this opportunity to collaborate with the community and see where everyone's holding on this. It's been a tremendous amount of research he's shared on GoPro since Friday morning, since they had earnings. Actually, Julian, tonight on our weekly, we just launched a weekly newsletter tonight for people who cannot get into our VIP community because it's just about closed, only a couple seats left. So we have a weekly newsletter they can subscribe through our Twitter profile, and we sent out the first one tonight. And we chose you as our researcher of the week, Julian, because you did so much great due diligence. To give you a little highlight there tonight because of the great due diligence you did on GoPro. So yeah, GoPro last close $9.58, $1.5 billion market cap. So we'd like to figure out what the story is behind this trade. Interesting chart here. So we're going to be talking to Julian about the 4 pillars: sentiment, catalyst, fundamentals, and technicals. Before you get started, I am just going to share this technical chart we got from our favorite technician, Rexman, over on Twitter, Rexman74. He says, GoPro breakout at all-time trend circled. This has been bouncing off long-term shoulders at the yellow and blue lines. Right now, it has to hold above the blue dot support at the 880s, and it's going up here on in my opinion. Long-term view, though, any big move could take weeks or months. So that's the technical view he has on GoPro. I'll just add, technically, I have a view here that this 200 DMA is very important at 1020, and if it breaks through, they can maybe go for a couple bucks. But let me just stop talking. I'll turn it over to Julian. Let's hear your thoughts on the fundamentals, catalyst, sentiment, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Ben. Well, you kind of set me up with all that research bump because the sting will be in the tail in this story. I spent 3 hours trying to conjure up an amazing piece of research, and I failed miserably. So that'll be the sting in the tail. But let's start with the company. And before we do that, not in a psychedelic way, but I think everyone should close their eyes before hearing what the company does, because a lot of animosity seems to be created with the name GoPro. There are a lot of people who have iPhones and become GoPro haters. I'm talking to you, Ben, because they think there's no utility in the concept whatsoever, and it's destined to fail. There are others who bought the stock a few years ago and they've lost 90% of their money and they also hate it. There are some people who were accustomed to using the GoPro of old, and rightly they've posted on VIP that their concerns about the software of the company. But I think let's put those concerns to one side for just 1 second. If I could come to you with a blank slate and say there's a company here which is market cap is about 1.5 billion, which has cash of about 200, so its EV is 1.3, and is generating something like 170 million in free cash flow, you'd be knocked off your seats and saying, well, how much of this can we buy, especially in this type of stock market? And why is it so cheap? Well, that's a good question. Why is it so cheap? I suspect the reason it's so cheap is because in the last 4 years, it's done nothing but disappoint. It seemed to be turning a corner about 2 quarters ago, but it wasn't significant. Last quarter was also pretty good, but again, not as good as would need convincing. And here we are today, and the revenue is 300 million. That means its EV to sales is less than 1 times. It shot the targets beyond anything one could have possibly conceived. So now let's talk about the company itself. And please stop me if I've missed an important metric that anyone wants to reassuring about.
Well, I'm gonna share my screen here with the latest company update from Friday, I believe. I'll just like
It's a presentation.
Yeah,
They don't actually put stuff in there. They put an appendix for the reconciliation over there.
No.
But it is useful to put it up. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll just
Those are the
pick and choose some stuff here.
Very important that we'll talk about the cameras in a minute, Ben, and you can tell us how you put your iPhone everywhere. I can put the GoPro. So we'll come back to that in a minute. The important thing to know about this company, what is it doing differently from what it's done before? It's doing three things. It's moving online rather than direct through to retail. It's moving up market. I think that's very significant. The products are getting more and more expensive, and customer reception is in fact very warm to the more expensive products rather than to the lesser. So it's moving up market and at the same time creating a brand image. It's creating clients who are possibly better off, certainly willing to spend more money, certainly stickier types of clients. And thirdly, which is the one that excites most of us, of course, it's setting up a subscription service which may or may not result in recurring revenue. It's those three things we'd like to focus on. So are their cameras so good that they have a market? Ben has rightfully said that anything a camera can do, and a professional camera can do, an iPhone can do better. So I pointed out to him that the iPhone is much bulkier, and who wants to carry an iPhone planted to the forehead or wherever? But a lot of people are wedded to the idea that iPhones can do everything. The only answer I can give to that is that I personally wouldn't dream of taking my most expensive camera and putting it in the water. I certainly wouldn't carry it around while I was skydiving, holding my hand to my face in this ridiculous way, contorting everything just to get the perfect image. A GoPro has amazing stabilization features, which means in whatever position it is, it will take the perfect image of you. You look at the reviews in Best Buy, I think I sent you a link, Ben, but anyone can go onto the Best Buy thing and you'll see 4.8 stars. I don't think they're all Chinese people who've somehow trolled the market. There's some genuine comments out there where they discuss why it is they will use the GoPro rather than anything else. It gets 4.8 stars on the iPhone app. So I think there is a market there, even as a hardware company. Now, I know Ben will disagree with that, and I know a lot of other people will. But
hey, stop saying I keep disagreeing with you. I'm trying to channel the bear sentiment from the market when I talk to you.
You're right, Ben.
That's it.
But the point is, you're quite right to say that. I take you as an emblem of society at large, and I think you're very right in your notion. And in fact, maybe that's one of the reasons the stock isn't higher, because one thinks it's another hardware stock destined to fail. I mean, you look at Canon and Sony and all the like, and they still got an edge in the professional camera market. They still have superior cameras. They're being destroyed in the Me Too camera game. But there certainly is a market, and the Hero Black 10, I believe, has a 6K, 60 frame a second or whatever it is. I don't know the jargon, but apparently the equivalent would be, you'd have to spend something like 3,000 in the market for. I doubt iPhone is going to reach that level this year or next year. And by the time they do, the camera will be one stage further. But the stabilization software is also unique, and that's very important to know. So I do think there is a market even as a hardware company. However, I agree that that wouldn't be enough to make it extremely exciting. They're also moving into subscription. Well, let's take back. They are doing two other things which we should talk about. They've opened up their camera software to the API to third parties. And they hope by doing that other outside of third parties will be able to collaborate by engineering uses which they hadn't hitherto envisaged by incorporating GoPro. They talk about video conferencing actually, because they have a 360 camera and they say it's much better quality than anybody else's, and perhaps it could be used. I'm thinking, I don't know, you love VTSI. I don't know how you can plant these cameras anywhere else, but there must be some ways of including them in other forms of technology beyond simply adventure sports. The third thing I'd note is that it's also a COVID play, because although it's managed COVID pretty well by going online and selling online, I think there's little doubt that as one can move overseas and get more and more adventurous, more people will start buying the product. They themselves alluded to the fact a few quarters ago that they think they'd been hurt by the shuttering of the shops and by lack of international travel. So I think that's a further wind or catalyst that may come along. Now let's talk about the main point that gets everyone excited, which is the recurring revenue. So the number of recurring subscribers they now have, they launched GoPro subscription. It costs $50 a month. It started off pretty slowly. It had 500,000 subscribers originally, but it's grown now to 1.3 million subscribers 1 year later. And they've already stated that they believe it will be over 1.7 by year end. So if that could be repeated, we obviously have an accumulative effect for next year. The big problem is, and I've said this, and I'm not sure anyone outside here can help me, and you have a very august bunch who seem to be extremely good at mathematics and spreadsheets. And I've tried, but I cannot work out how many of those subscribers hitherto have been lost and how many new net new subscribers there are. There are definitely 1.34 million subscribers now. The question is, if you look at what the subscription contains, it's basically you pay $50, you get insurance, you get the possibility of buying other product cheaper, and you get to buy the camera that you are currently buying for $100 less. So seen in that light, that you pay $50 subscription to get $100 off the camera. Everybody is going to take the subscription, obviously, that year because they want the camera cheaper. They're going to get it $50 cheaper net. They're going to get insurance as well. So it's a no-brainer that they will be recruiting subscribers. Indeed, someone asked in the questions, I remember a few months, I think it was the Q2 presentation, how is it that 10% of the people aren't taking up the subscription? What are they, lunatics not taking advantage of it? You didn't have really an answer for it, but it's interesting. They recognize they're basically buying subscribers. So in that case, if they're buying subscribers, what happens at the end of the year? Do they keep their subscribers or not? And that's the question. And I see one or two brokers have asked. In fact, this is when you listen to their transcripts, their calls, you'll see they're attended basically by 4 people, and they're big hitters. It's Morgan Stanley, Citibank, Oppenheimer. They're pretty big hitters. They ask this question. They do not get an answer. That is until this quarter, where they did release how much revenue the subscribers were making, and that is 14 million. So in a rudimentary fashion, you can take the number of subscribers this year, for this month, this quarter, subtract it from the subscribers last quarter, you'll see it's about 1.8 million net ads. Multiply it by $50, you come to $9 million, yet they've made $14 million. So there's $5 million extra beyond the net ads of this last year. It's only in the last year that the subscription was so one-sided that one inevitably had to buy it. So you have to say that there is an accretive effect, but the question is whether the 5 million is fully accretive or not. I mean, I can go into this and it gets too technical, but I think it's probably better to do by direct messaging. In effect, there definitely is an accretive number of subscribers, but I'm unable to pinpoint how many they are. If you listen to what they say, although they don't give numbers, they keep saying we're very pleased with it, we're very encouraged, and they also note that there were 830,000 net ads over the year, net new ads over the year. By saying net new ads, they're obviously saying it doesn't include the old subscribers being replaced. The number of maximum new subscribers is 800,000. That's it. And since they've got 1.3 million now, that means they must still have 500,000 of the old subscribers, which is in fact how many subscribers they used to have to start with. So those numbers would suggest there is zero, there's zero churn, which would be very, very encouraging. The quarter you're going to discover whether this is in fact true or not will be next quarter. Then whatever they do, they won't be able to hide because it'll be the first true quarter into a new year of new purchasers buying for new subscriptions. Then you'll see how many have dropped out from the first quarter of the last offer. And then you will clearly know whether it has, how much the churn has been. I don't know whether they'd be lying about this or not. If you trust them, then you'll have to take on that a very good percentage have retained. And as I've said, from the little I've been able to examine, I would surmise that in fact the percentages are quite high. All right, so then we have accretive revenues. The accretive revenue this year, as I said, is 13 million. Let's suppose next year they make another 13, 14, 15 million. That's very conservative. Plus you've got last year's 13 million, let's say with a 70% subscription rate. And now you're up to 25 million simply from recurring revenue. And that's without any other forms of expansion of product. So we've talked about this. I think they could move into well, I'm not sure, into the VTSI market. We talked about the webcam market. They talk about the metaverse themselves. I'm not sure what that would mean. They have many people sharing videos on their site, but it's been pointed out to me that they did this before 5-6 years ago via YouTube. I'm not sure. They used to have very little control previously. Now they have much more control. Their video software seems to be well liked. And that in itself may be a reason why people stay on. Insurance is a good reason why people should stay on. So personally, I think because of the fundamentals, giving me reassurance that it's not going to go down anytime soon. We can't predict the market in 10 years or no, but I don't think their model is bad. I think going up market distinguishes them from the past. And because of the possibility of recurring revenue coming through, although it's not guaranteed, and I'd welcome other people trying to verify the churn rate, but it will become clear next quarter. And if we wait to next quarter, it'll be too late, I think, to clamber on board. And because I think in blue sky terms, that adventure sports isn't limited simply to those who are willing to commit suicide, but it's going to expand to all areas where you think your camera is at risk. I think we all like to overspend. We used to buy I remember in my day, we used to buy the rugged Sony Walkman, which was clad in yellow simply because we worried that a drip of water would get onto it. You know, I think people do like the best of breed, whether it's the Hummer, which now of course is not ecologically friendly, but I think people do like the best of breed, whether or not they need it 100%. So I think because of COVID, because they've gone up market, I think the catalyst is there because finally they've thrown themselves, they've set down the gauntlet with a stellar set of figures. And in 2 months' time, and the time is that we're approaching, the churn rate will become absolutely clear to everybody. And that by then it'll be too late to clamber on board. So I think the catalyst, whether it's today on the results or a week before the next set of results, is becoming ever closer. My problem is the sentiment. And I frankly admit, in my day when we used to invest funds, sentiment was gauged by the broker. We made our own sentiment, in fact. We would buy what was valuable and then tell the world that this is a good stock. And the world consisted not of the retail traders that we now have, but rather of other fund managers. And the brokers, Goldman Sachs and whoever it was, they were our conduits to convey the sentiment. Nowadays, it's a lot trickier, probably fairer, and sentiment is a very hard thing to gauge. And for that, Ben, I think I'm going to co-opt you into the discussion because you seem to think that they have very, very poor sentiment.
Well, let me actually throw back at you and talk first a little bit about the fundamentals and this report Q3. If it was back in the day, I guess, you know, you were a Wall Street insider at one point. What were you, a hedge fund manager? What did you do? What was your job?
I was a fund manager at Merrill Lynch in England. And yeah, around 4 billion.
Nice. All right. Well, beautiful. So with results like this, if you didn't have to worry about the retail traders, how much you think the stock should be worth today? Like what kind of reaction, were you really expecting on Friday?
Simply because of fundamentals, you'd expect this company to be trading on at least 1.7 to 2 times sales. You'd be expecting it to trade on something like 12, 13 times cash flow. So I would have said between 50 to 100% higher simply on the numbers. However, I take that this company has got a bad history and that therefore it needs to prove itself. So one would probably discount it by, I don't know, 20%, and you're still left with a 50% price rise target. The beauty of this and the difficulty with this, it becomes very subjective to know what risk premium to associate with a company that has a poor record. Now, for myself, I'm convinced by their new strategy, which is to go up market and get stickier people. But a lot of people have been burnt in the hardware business. And I take the point fully that hardware companies come and go. I think this one has shown staying power, even with great tenacity, even when thrown almost into bankruptcy. They've come round. I think there's nothing better than to be proven baptism by fire. a bit like Crocs. I think Crocs almost went bankrupt, and look at them now. So that's what I would do without any blue sky. Now you're asking me what's my blue sky, and my particular blue sky, that the recurring revenue will become an enduring stream, although I need to see the churn rate. If I saw the churn rate was less than 30%, I'd say this stock was already worth twice as much as it is today, no questions asked, but I don't know what the churn rate is. And then in my mind, I think businesses grow and tend to develop and have lives of their own. So you can't quite limit it by putting any numbers on it. I think it will expand out of its original arena. So I think the blue sky, once sentiment gets on board, if it ever turns, and that's up to you, Ben, but if it ever turns, I can see a lot of people making up stories, such as the one someone kindly posted on the VIP, that it's going to become a metaverse stock, whatever that may mean, that somehow there's going to be a band of army loyal followers, and it's going to expand into every conceivable area of one's life. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
So my answer is 50% to 300%.
So perfect. So you captured a lot of the sentiment thoughts, right? The two main things being people got really burned on them in the past. Let me pull up the chart here. There we go. Okay, GoPro, for those of you who are not around, let's go back. I don't know what year that was, but all right, there we go. All right, wow. All right, so a lot of people did get burned on this in the past. How do we go negative? All right. So that's the one thing. The other thing is the whole iPhone, right? Why do we need a camera, right? So you captured that. Now, there was a video from the Popular Investor YouTube video that was put in the research room earlier today that I took a look at. And the guy who was making that video made a really good point, which really resonates with me, about the brand and their marketing channels. So let's go back to here. So talking about 47 million social followers across all platforms, 10 million plus YouTube subscribers, 21 million Instagram followers. That's super valuable, even if you have nothing to sell yet, right? So, you can probably correlate some sort of market cap, for a brand that just has these social media followers. And it's probably something very significant because, he was saying, they can get into other products. And when they, and you noted the reviews, the followers, they really love GoPro. They're like fanatical, followers of GoPro. So there is some optionality upside if they were to get into other businesses and other products. Also, yes, the metaverse thing, I've seen something on social media about that. Someone mentioned in that one of the Facebook videos that was put about the metaverse recently with Mark Zuckerberg, they said there was a GoPro camera that was being used there, and you could even see the GoPro logo or something. I don't know if that's true or not. I didn't verify it myself.
Well, there's a rumor Tesla will be using it on all four sides of their car.
Is that true?
No, I just started it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, as far as sentiment goes, the way I look at it, it's not all we're story trading, right? It's the four pillars. So at some point, I believe that, maybe the fundamentals can be so good that it overrides the sentiment, right? That's what I'm looking at right now.
So that's a very good point. The problem with that is it may not be next quarter. I'm convinced it has to change because even the churn, which is the one question people had, has to be answered simply by the numbers with or without their cooperation. Until then, how do we know what will happen?
So, all right, let me tell you what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a stock, and my chart got totally screwed up. I gotta reset it somehow. All right, let's go to AT&T and go back to GoPro. All right, that's much better. So, or maybe not. Let's zoom in here to the daily. All right, this is what I'm looking at as a story trade idea for myself. You brought this up Friday morning, and I went for it right away because I saw that this stock was at 13 or so before this quarter, which was a blowout. If you look at the sequential results here, I mean, this quarter, and no signs of any slowdown for Q4, except margins are going down a little bit because of the shipping issues, but it's still going to be higher, than last quarter, right?
They actually said they'll get the 3 points back next quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're talking about 1.7 million subscribers. So no signs of slowing down, and it's lower than it was back up here at 1370. And you got the 200 DMA here. To me, now this is the risk, right? If it doesn't, this is strong resistance. If it doesn't break the 200 DMA, may not work out. But I'm personally playing with a bunch of calls here because I think if it breaks the 200 DMA, I think this thing rockets a dollar to possibly like $3. It's like it's like a 10 to 30% move, and the options are super, super cheap. So that's what I'm looking at. So this is, for me personally, this is different than air or something like that, where, hey, this could be a 10 bagger or whatever. I have a long-term vision, or a 5 bag. It doesn't need to be a 5 or 10 or bag or anything like that. All you need is a 20, 30, 40, 50% move. And if the fundamentals, you're telling me this is worth 50 to 100% higher on fundamentals, you can get that technicals to turn. You can get maybe a little bit of shift in sentiment, whether it's, metaverse or just people, or maybe just the fundamentals overtake the sentiment. There's also the thing of it's fairly highly shorted, and there's a lot of options volume. So this could become a target of Reddit people to just grab on. Like what was AMC? AMC was a dying business. Why did AMC become such a cult stock, right? It was simply because it was highly shorted, right? And they made a story out of it, and they kept targeting it for gamma squeezes. I say that this could have the same potential. So
this is only 15% shorted, so I'm sure it's quite the same. But I think the blue sky is much higher on this. I mean, all the management has to say, frankly, is that they are opening up the camera for discussions with a particular group. You got excited when I mentioned Tesla. It could be anybody. And the point is, it's plausible. So you can make up the story to carry the sentiment. But I'd love to hear the bear case, because the fact that it won't break 20, which I get.
Yeah, well, look, I think the bear case is simply that people don't believe that 5 to 10 years from now, this business will be around. That's the bear case. We had a fascinating, I know we're running overtime big time, but that, this is fascinating. I just want to stick with it. So guys, if stick around, we'll try to finish this in a few minutes, and then we'll do trade of the week. But when it comes to sentiment and retail sentiment specifically, I actually think that retail does a better job than institutions of being forward-looking. Many times they may be a little too early. Many times they may get burnt because they're not looking at the cash balance and the cash burn, and you can get these toxic offerings, right, that can screw them. But in a way, these professional investors, they're like trading quarter to quarter. Like, how much money are they making this quarter and next quarter? Whereas retail, they're actually really investing. They're thinking about what company is going to be around in 10, 15 years. And I can tell you this from empirical data, just talking to people who are very peripherally involved in the stock market. A lot of people coming into my universe lately because of air, right? Friends and family and things like that. And they're getting involved in stocks. And you could see the default way that retail thinks is, I want to invest in they're aspirational, right? They're aspirational, and they want to invest in something that's going to be around and huge, the next best thing that's going to be around in 10, 15, 20 years. So you give them a GoPro, and they're like, what the hell is GoPro? Like, camera, phones have everything, like that is the sentiment. And I think that's the biggest risk. And maybe they're right. Maybe this company prints so much money in the next 2-3 years, right? And their PE is going to be like 4. It'll trade at like 3 times cash flow, and they can like pay the entire market cap and dividend in 3 years. And it might be like that forever, because retail thinks this company is not going to be around in 10, 15, 20 years. That's possible.
So we should short it then.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's, two sides. There's a lot of market participants out there, and nothing's 100%. Like, so for me, I'm just playing this. Honestly, I'm playing this 200 DMA.
There's a serious point you just made. So in the olden days, what we would do to change sentiment and bring reality closer is to try and persuade the brokers. That's what fund managers would do. Today, it's the influencers who have to do that with the retail crowd and say, get off your sorry ass and start taking cameras seriously. Look, how does one change people's sentiment?
So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. Look, I'm definitely interested in this because you're telling me the fundamentals are 50 to 100% higher. The 200 DMA is just like pennies away. That looks like a nice bet I'm willing to take. that this thing breaks that 200 DMA on the fundamental results next week and runs 30%. That's what I'm in it for. This is not a company I just want to buy in whole and stick in my IRA for 10 years. And if that happens, listen, part of the sentiment, a trend trade out there, and you're telling me 15% isn't high, the short position, it's enough to capture the attention of retail traders. It is that want to bust the shorts. It is. And do you have very high options liquidity with this stock, very high. So you have the options liquidity, you have 15% short, you have a story of increased earnings, you have the 200 DMA there. I mean, if the Reddit guys are going to find this next week, I want to plant a seed and be ahead of them.
So you're right. I think in the end, the options are a very cheap way of playing this. I have to say you're right. But fundamentally, it may be, as you say, that we can wait till next quarter and clamber on after the results then, when the churn will be clear to everybody and then nothing can stop it. But I hear your point.
Yeah, that was the way I was playing it when I first was looking at it last week. Was I was combining both of those ideas. I bought a option spread for April, and I believe what I did was, let me just pull it up here. Yeah, I bought one leg that was in the money at $9. And then I sold the $12 and I was able to get that for just $1, which means that since that total option spread has a max value of 3, it was basically like 3x if I'm right. And then I lose everything if it closes below 9. So that was and that's because that's for April. That incorporates that next report in there as well.
That's very clever.
Yeah, he's very clever with his options.
You want to post that spread for all of us to copy if we can? Is that possible? Can you share the spread, Ben?
Yeah, maybe in the WhatsApp room we'll do that. Yeah, in the GoPro research group or the trading room we'll do that.
I mean, is David on the chat? Because I respect he's always playing the bear case very cogently. So I'm trying to.
I don't know. Is that you, Dave S? Not sure. There's a Dave S here. Maybe that's him. But yeah, he loved this stock. He jumped on it, and he is usually very critical. He's very picky about what he buys. So that was surprising that he found the stock he likes. I mean, he's in the community for 2 or 3 years, and I think has only ever liked like 2 stocks. It was like SMSI, and then he finally got onto air at like $5 or $6, I think. So
I did that as well, and you know why I was reluctant to get in? Because I was badly burnt by air a few years ago. I think I bought it at $2.60 and it clambered right back down to $1.30.
Yeah.
One's resistance level has to be overcome.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts out there? We want to hear from, it's a very well-known stock. Could be very controversial. A lot of probably passionate views on it. If anyone has any thoughts on that, please let us know. Otherwise, what we're going to do here is, let me share my screen one more time. We are running late, so I want to let people know you can collaborate with Julian in the GoPro research group. And we have lots of events coming up, although, man, they're coming in so fast and furious. Our website's not updated at all. Let me tell you what's going on this week. This week, with Jared's help, we started Twitter Spaces. We have a regular schedule 3 times a week. So it's going to be Mondays at 4 p.m. We're going to go over our VIP trade ideas, which we're about to do in just a second. Then Wednesday nights at 8 p.m., we're going to have like philosophical conversations. I can't wait on what's a story trade, how important is sentiment, how does sentiment fit into fundamentals, all that kind of stuff. That stuff I just love. I can't wait to talk to the world about that. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. And then every Sunday night at 8 p.m., right before our VIP show, we'll be on Twitter Spaces to discuss what went on in story trading for the past week, mostly for the people who are not VIP members. In addition, this Friday at 10 a.m., we're interviewing the CEO of Fun, P-H-U-N. It is not a VIP pick, but there's a lot of interest in that stock. Fun is reporting earnings like 5 p.m. Thursday night, the night before. So we got the CEO of Fun to jump on Twitter Spaces with us at 10 a.m. the next morning. And then I believe next Sunday night, we have a VIP pick presentation on Matterport, MTTR. Another, that's a metaverse stock. A lot of, interest around that stock and that sector. So tons of events going on. Maybe we can get caught up with our website listings, but if you're a VIP member, you'll always know what's going on. So definitely, follow us on YouTube and on Twitter. We ran really late today. Sorry about that, guys, but we're going to now move on to Trade of the Week. So stick around.